When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. I wanted to have you back on after our last episode. You had so much good content and just a lot of great he had so much more mental stuff in there. And Ronnie actually warned me, he goes, be careful. He's a well-studied guy. He'll open your mind up a little bit. And sure enough, that's what happened. So anyway, thanks for coming back in. And this is Frank Murr. I'm sure if you're watching this or you follow UFC, you know who Frank is. And you've seen him. I love that one scene in the fight with Brock Lesnar, where you're wrapping his leg and almost ripped it right off his body.
That was self-preservation. I figured if I get rid of his leg and stop fighting.
Wow. How long did it take you to get down there? Like, I counted probably, was that 10 minutes down there? All I remember is you grabbed his leg and you started reaping on it. And I wasn't sure how much time that was.
As far as locking up the move, it was only seconds. And then, and then once I started applying pressure on it, he was actually tapping for a lot longer than the referee to acknowledge to come in and actually stop it. That's why I didn't let go immediately. Just because the rules of the system of MMA, if you have something locked up and the guy taps and you let go, but the referee didn't call it, it doesn't count.
Oh, so you gotta wait for the ref to see it and call it. And he may be in pain, but it could go against you really quick. Right.
I've seen guys let stuff go being a nice guy, and then it doesn't pay off for them in the end.
Ouch. Yeah, Ron said you were pretty brutal. You were not very forgiving when you got in that cage.
Well, I mean, it's a combative sport, and the things we're doing is to incapacitate people. If you're there, I never treated it like a game where it was just like, well, I realize that we're both trying to harm each other to become the dominant, victor.
Okay, it makes sense. Because what's going on in your mind? Like, I think we may have covered this last time, but what's fascinating to me is psychology of when you go from 2 steps outside the cage and you go into the cage and you're facing your opponent. What's going on in your wills when you're seeing, let's say, Brock there, your opponent? You're just studying his body language to figure out where you can hit him and take him down the quickest? Yeah,
there's just patterns that occur over and over in fights. And, and there's only so many ways a guy can throw a punch, only so many ways a guy can change levels or throw a kick. And so obviously there's variations because, no two humans are built exactly the same, but still almost all things line up to where there's certain patterns and movements that are indicative that always occur. And so that's what training comes from. You're constantly training to see things that, your brain has to think less if it's familiar with something. It's just kind of like, typing. The first time you have to look at the keyboards, but after a while, your body starts to understand neurologically where things are and what comes after what. And certain patterns become more ingrained into you, they become faster. I'm sure if someone's typing, they realize that certain letters, the fingers tend to hammer out faster because they occur more often because there's a pattern. And so because of that, that's pretty much what's happening in the fight. And as you're getting closer to walking in where it's turning on, it's trying to eliminate a lot of ambient noise. If you're driving a car, you're thinking about what you're going to go eat for breakfast the next day, maybe the conversation you had the night before with the wife, the conversation you have with an employee or a boss or whatnot. Those things are distracting. And so when you're fighting, you just eliminate all those outside voices. That's why I've had friends of mine go, hey man, I was standing right by the cage. When you walked by, you looked at me. I was like, didn't see you, didn't acknowledge. That's not where my focus was. You know what I mean?
So you go into like the baseball game, clear the mechanism, and then you clear that mechanism and you just tune it all out. And you're just going to fight like warrior mode.
Yep. Yeah, you're very much living in the id. And you can't stay in that way the whole time. Obviously, your brain's going to have a certain amount of mental endurance. It's like trying to hold a certain thought. No matter what, you're going to eventually break from it. The mind just doesn't work that way to where I can sit there and focus and hyper-focus for minutes at a time. So as I do, you break off, and there's times for, self-auditing of what's occurring in the fight, what's going on, and you can step back when you're out of danger and kind of reassess. and then you jump back in and then, you know, you implement whatever is going on. And then, you know, there's a lot of again, it's kind of like I try to really, I think people have an easier time understanding. I'm like, we're kind of like a quarterback in a football game. I walk up to the line, there's a play that we think we're going to run because of what we think is going to occur for the situation and who we're playing and what tools I have. But as I walk up and I'm reading, I'm going to make adjustments on the fly. You know what I mean? I might change the play before we even go. I might go ahead and stick to the play, but all of a sudden my first read's not where I'm going to go. Oh, that guy's tied up second read. And then sometimes there's all-out chaos where it's like, oh, I'm going to scramble and just try to save this play because it's all gone, you know, to hell. And so that's probably the best, you know, comparison that I can make with what it's like to be a fighter. You know, and that's what's occurring. You know, I walk in there with a game plan of what I think is going to occur, but you can't be beholden to it. You have to realize that I'm going to make adjustments as I go and also know how to scramble and complete chaos to make that occur.
So the key word there, you said chaos. So you got to be able to manage your emotions and control your emotions in the midst of that chaos for about that one round.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
So you train, that's what you do during the week is train for that chaos.
Yep. And I try to eliminate emotions in all aspects of it, meaning that I've never learned, and maybe someone smarter than I can tell me, but if you feel happy about something, like if I get a dominant position on you and I feel a rush of euphoria going, yes, I'm in a good position. Right. That means that when you get into a bad position, you're going to feel negative feelings towards it because you now have opened up that door of your mind of being emotionally attached to what you're doing. I've always tried to, as much as possible, to be unemotionally attached until the fight's over with. So that way, whether I'm in a phenomenal position or whether I'm in a really horrible position, I have no emotional attachment to it. To me, they're just calculations. Well, even if I'm in a dominant position, what do I have to do next to increase my dominance or to finish this? And if I'm in a very bad position or losing, how do I change the pace of this and improve upon my position? How do I move instead of sitting there going, oh, man, this sucks? That slows you down. You know what I mean? Like you're sitting there thinking about it. Like, look, afterwards, when you watch it on tape, you can be emotionally attached to it.
You know, that brought me to the scene where I was watching you and Brock go at it. I think maybe the last fight or second fight, I can't remember, but he was giving you the elbows, just the elbows, and your head was on the mat, just boom. He was just giving to you left and right. I'm like, how the heck does he get through that mentally? He's just getting pounded. And I was just like, it just kind of fascinated my mind, like, okay, what's going on with Frank's head right now? Because he's getting pummeled right now by him. And what's your survival instincts at that point in time when you're getting just crushed at that time?
Well, obviously I'm not, you address what's occurring. I'm like, okay, this is happening. How do I improve the position? How do I get into a better spot to increase, I think a lot of people, the mistake would be to sit there going, oh, damn, I'm being hit. And then you just focus on that instead of going, okay, I acknowledge that I'm being hit. What do I have to do to keep that from happening? Or what, because he's hitting me, what's open that I can pay to take advantage of?
So you're figuring out where his body is at on you, and you're getting ready for that counter move when he gives that inch or half an inch. You're ready to flip it and flip the switch and make that move. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, instead of sitting there going, man, this sucks, this is where I'm at. I'm like, but the time you just wasted right now, the 2 or 3 seconds of that epiphany that, man, this is horrible. You've wasted 3 seconds of, you've wasted 2 or 3 heartbeats that you could have been looking to improve your position, improve the scenario.
Okay. I'm fascinated by the psychology of the fight, being in the cage and all that. Like, I would never be the one in the cage because I knew I don't like pain that much. I don't even know how I graduated from the Marine Corps boot camp. It's just like, I don't know.
I'm not a fan of pain, but it's unnecessary evil.
Unnecessary, right, exactly.
Unnecessary evil, I guess I should say.
Right. So, I know you're in your middle of your career. You've been fighting in the UFC MMA for what? How many years now? 20, something like that.
Going on 20 years, yeah, professionally.
Okay. Professionally. And what do you enjoy about the league, the UFC, the MMA, and all the different leagues? What are the best parts that you enjoyed the most out of fighting?
To me, what they provide for me as a competitor is a stage to compete against the best people in the world. And so, a lot of guys, I'm the kind of guy that when I go to the range and shoot, I want to go and shoot against other people, or I want to shoot against myself, or, okay, if I have a timer, if I pulled and draw this fast, how do I make myself faster? How do I increase that? And the one thing about martial arts is it's not as easy as shooting, where I can set up scenarios and you can kind of push yourself pretty hard by yourself. Fighting, you need a dance partner. I need somebody to combat against. And so to really test yourself, you have to increase the difficulty of who you're facing to really find out if what you're doing, if there's truth behind it. So I guess I'm very much of a scientist in that way, and that's what MMA has provided me, is that I can go in there and test myself and go, well, I'm thinking that this is the way to do things, and I get to find out if I'm correct or not pretty quickly. Whereas I think a lot of guys or women, I think we have this idea in the back of our head that we could really, oh man, if the situation calls for it, I'll make it happen.
Right.
That makes you feel comfortable right now while you're sitting on the couch, But if all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, by the way, here's a contract. In 2 weeks, you're going to fight. What you're doing at home right now? Is it enough? Is it really? And most people would freak out and go, no, I'm not ready. I need more time. I'm like, exactly. But I'm always trying to think that opportunity to test myself is right around the corner. So I don't wait till the contract's on my desk. I'm constantly looking to improve and look. And obviously having fights gives me opportunities to, again, test myself.
So the biggest thing you love about the industry is testing yourself constantly, and the science in you to experience that test and push yourself to the next level.
Well, and I grew up in a traditional martial arts background. My dad owned a karate school. And even though his was very much full contact, much more like what you saw in the 70s with Joe Louis and whatnot, it wasn't as watered down yet. And his school didn't make it because of the fact he wasn't watered down. Guys are getting their teeth removed, black eyes, broken noses. My first time ever getting my ribs broken was in his gym. I was 14 years old. And so I never wanted to be that guy. You sit around and people, talking about what they can do. I'm like, but do you really know? I mean, and thankfully we live in a society that we're not really physically fighting on a regular basis. I mean, most full-grown men might get into 1 or 2 altercations by the time they leave high school till the time they get buried. It just isn't common for us to be fighting all the time. I mean, there are a few people out there, but the way our laws are set up, eventually it's going to catch up to you, and you're either going to never own anything or you're going to end up in prison, or both, And so the MMA fighting gave me an opportunity to constantly be pushing and testing myself in a way that was realistic, in a way that I could feel that I was actually, being truthful in the evaluation of what my skills were in a one-on-one combative situation with no weapons were involved.
Almost the perfect scenario for a good fight, with no weapons.
Yeah, and obviously in the real world doesn't always lend to that. But when people tell me that, it's almost kind of like a lot of the competitive shooting courses guys, competitions guys do. My dad does the IDPD, International Defensive Pistol. And people are like, well, it's not real. I'm all, but here's the thing. You shoot paper targets. He goes every week and he's doing this. You're right. It's not real. No one's shooting back at him. But out of the two of you right now, if you guys got into a gunfight, I'm betting on him. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same reason why our military use sim rounds. They go through houses and they do things. Is it 100% real? No, it's not. There's not real bad guys shooting live rounds at them. You're right. It's not 100% real. But it's as close to real as we can make it. So that way, when the real life stuff does happen, it's not such a far jump. And that's what I think MMA is provided for me. You're right. When people sit there and go, well, it's not a real street fight. I'm all, it's about as close as we can legally get to and keep practicing without killing each other. And I actually get to train my maneuvers. You might sit there and go, I'll poke you in the eye. I'm like, really? How many times have you done that in real life? How many times have you even practiced it? You can't. So you're telling me, I always tell people, it's like, you got two pitchers you can use in the next, you're going to call up. You can call up the guy who's thrown his fastball 1,000 times against 1,000 different people. Or you can call up the other guy who has this crazy sinker that he's never practiced. But he knows it. He's done it in the midair, but he's never actually thrown it live at anybody. I don't care what you tell me. I'm not going to take you. I'm going to take the guy who has a more legitimate shot of accomplishing the goal because he's actually practiced it 1,000 times against unwilling participants that didn't want him to do it to him. And that's what MMA is. I'm constantly in the gym choking and punching and kneeing people that don't want to be choked, punched, or kneed, and they're getting out of the way and they're firing back at me. So when people sit there and go, well, in a real fight, I'm all, when's the last time you practiced a real fight? You know what I mean? Like what I'm practicing is closer to what you're practicing, which is nothing. And you just have this, again, humans are so great at bullshitting ourselves, telling ourselves and making ourselves feel more comfortable so we can sleep at night going, oh, well, when it came down to it, I could. I'm all, no. Feel better about yourself. You probably never have to find out the ugly truth, but the truth is no, you're not going to be able to handle the situation at all.
Right. Yeah, so true. Like in training, this becomes second, muscle memory. And the EP, go to EP course, EP school, you learn to walk the diagram, the box, and the stuff that you learned as balancing in the clubs in Vegas. It's like 99% of the time in the bodyguard world, you're not going to pull out a gun. But you're like we talked about before, I think about a week or so ago when we last had our podcast together, how, it's going to be, it's going to be judo, it's going to be hands-on, it's going to be combative. Not going to be any weapons involved usually. It's just going to be bump them out, get the guy out the X, get him in the car and get him out of there. And a lot of people just don't train for that. They're so used to standing and position of attention on the red carpet and looking pretty. That's not really EP work. You go down to Mexico and do maneuvers in Mexico or go to Iraq. That's the real EP stuff and getting shot at and all that. And most people here in the States, they don't get it. Unless you've been, training like you guys do 7 days a week, 5 days a week in the gym on the mat, getting punched and punched and punched. And so when you get punched, you're like, oh, that was just a punch. My nose bleeding. Oh, well, let's keep going. Most guys in the EP world, I hate to say it, but a lot of them they're kind of wimpy. They're not ready for when things go south real fast. Can they handle it? Probably not. Maybe out of 100%, maybe 10% are going to be able to handle their principal and get them off that X.
Yeah, and I think, too, the one thing you brought up there to really add emphasis to it is that, I don't think things go 0 to 100 miles an hour in the drop of a hat. I think most things that people realize, in my history of dealing with violent confrontations, they escalate. They start out, verbal. Then they might get into pushing. Then they turn into a fist fight. And then maybe someone goes and grabs something that, to help leverage themselves into an advantage in the fight, a beer bottle or whatever the case may be, or, throwing a chair. But if you really broke it down in your head, I'm like, hey, this had levels. There was layers to this. And the more proficient you are at the different layers, the less you can probably try to avoid getting to that level to where, well, damn, now I had to pull my weapon and draw and fire on you because, the guy, he grabbed a kitchen knife or the butter knife off the, the table of the restaurant. Now he's coming after me. And now it's like, well, you know what? There was a lot of steps before he built himself up to that. Very few people are complete sociopaths and are able to just go from eating a meal into pure violence of trying to shove a knife down your throat. Most people talk themselves into it. They build them up. Their courage. I've seen it so many times at the bar where I've said something to somebody, about their behavior. Just, hey, relax, chill out. And if it didn't handle and touch them the right way, they didn't become instantly violent. I could see them over there building themselves up, convincing themselves in their head, bargaining and talking and building up that courage and that, psyching themselves out in a sense to take it to the next level. And so that's where I'm like, oh, let me nip this in the bud here verbally and try to avoid it heading up to the next level to where we don't get there.
Yeah, you described it perfectly. There's always a cycle of growth, the body language, the escalation. Like you said, it doesn't go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It just doesn't happen the way the human mind, you said, unless you're a sociopath. That might be different.
And I'm not saying there's not those guys out there that walk up to and start drawing and unloading rounds. You're right. It happens, down in Florida, the guy that walked in a nightclub. You can show me stories where like, well, what happened there? I'm like, well, there was a buildup, but no one saw it coming. The guy was hanging out there for a year or two. The signs weren't as evident, but there still was an escalation of violence in this person's mind, of probing the area and planning and getting things going. And then, like I said, most people in real life, those, even if they're just a chance, chaotic, situation, there's still levels to it. Most people can't just go from, first gear to fifth. They're going to build up.
That's just a great point for the guys in the EP industry, security industry that are watching this podcast, so they know that when they're studying different people in different schools, you being a master in your field in the UFC and MMA and all that, they can apply those notes to their knowledge or tool belt going forward. One thing I want to ask you, I was curious about, I hear you're a free agent now, and you got some possibilities coming up here down the road the next few months or whatever. And what's life looking like for you? Do you have more business projects in the future you're looking at to do once you decide to hang up the belt and get off the mat and do some other things? Are there any industries up there that are fascinating to you beyond the octagon, beyond MMA and all that?
Well, actually, this one, executive protection is something I'm very much interested in. And just because of it lends to a craft I'm already in. And I think a lot of the things that I've done to prepare for what I do, there's a lot of crossover. And obviously it's not 100%, but I have to, just like me being a bouncer wasn't 100% crossover from being a fighter. In fact,
right.
Often those skills almost kind of contradicted each other of what I needed to accomplish. Talking myself out of situations, talking other people out of situations. But the martial arts and the mindset of how to deal with people, whether it's a punch or whether it's a thought, the human mind is kind of the same. I remember when Miyamoto Musashi said that in his book, one man can learn to fight 10, then 10 men can learn to fight 100. And I think what he was trying to convey there was that the mind is the same. It's just we have different attachments, whether we're fighting, an open warfare, or we're, it's aircraft, or whether it's just hand to hand. It's still the human element, and so understanding that and understanding yourself and understanding others, I think is very universal. And then as far as, I'm going to keep on fighting right now because I'm 41, but, I'm in the gym all the time. My daughter is a professional, wants to turn pro here in the next 3 months probably. And she's not even 8. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
So it keeps me training. So, I thought I was going to get away from it. I'm not. So actually now, I have a very strong interest in the bare knuckle boxing. I think that MMA is very close to a fight, and there's a lot of things in there. But I think right now we have a lot of wrestling in MMA. And my only complaint to that is, it's hard to hold a guy against a car door for 3 or 4 minutes, and a lot of fighters are now doing this in MMA. And whereas the bare knuckle boxing, the way the rules set, it allows for clinching, so it has a similarity of a real fight. But once you're just holding and you're not doing anything besides hanging on, they break you. And that's something I've argued for us to have in MMA for the longest time. I'm like, hey, look, the clinch is real, but, in a real fight, you're not just going to close your hands, grab me around the waist, pin me against the cage, and sit there, not even for 30 seconds for the referee to start us over. In bare knuckle boxing, it's basically like the minute you stop being violent, they break you so that you can go back to trying to have an opportunity for violence. And so, I really like that concept. So it looks like I'm going to go that way maybe for the next, year or so.
About another year or so in the octagon, throwing guys around, beating them up a little bit, and get that last belt and call it quits and go into the EP industry possibly. I heard you might be going into training school maybe for the executive protection type stuff.
Yeah, Ron Owen and I have been talking about what I could provide. Obviously he has much more of an expert in that world of the totality of what it takes. And so, one thing I've learned about martial arts is, when I walk into someone else's field house, be attentive and learn that, hey, they're the reason why they're there and why they're good at what they do. And even if you have confidence of yourself, don't ever speak so much that you can't hear the advice of others.
Oh, that's profound. A lot of truth to that. Totally, a lot of truth. So are you thinking about maybe going into the bodyguard world yourself, or you enjoy more being a trainer in the EP industry, is like in school and curriculum?
I think both. I mean, obviously, I think that being a trainer, I have a lot to provide because I do that already in my world, and my ability to convey technique and explain things and the mindset behind them. But then also too, just again, I don't want to be the guy that ever is teaching on a subject that's never really ever 100% done that. It'd be like being a commentator for MMA, and even though you've trained it, you never actually had a fight.
Right.
There's going to still be a little bit of more expertise that someone such as myself, when I'm commentating a fight, can bring them on board, because I'm like, hey, not only have I trained this in the gym, I've actually done it for real at a high level.
So true. Yeah. Now, are you to go into the sports announcements type stuff too, you think, as a business, a side thing, or is that an opportunity?
Yeah, I've already been doing that. So, yep, that's definitely something I do.
Cool. Yeah, I heard you and Ron were out shooting weapons last weekend or something. Got a little crazy.
Yeah, and actually I got to see a couple techniques that were pretty cool that I had never worked on. Drawing and firing a weapon with somebody that basically is on top of you.
Wow.
We were firing and discharging weapons basically at, point blank without, obviously not pushing in with the, because I use a semi-automatic, obviously, a pistol, not a revolver. So I didn't want to take it out of battery by pushing in on it, but still learning how to draw the weapon, clear people, and still fire rounds.
Where'd you guys do that? In Oklahoma?
Yeah. I couldn't tell you where yet. That's Ron, where range he took us to.
Yeah, his secret little range that he does stuff at. Yeah. He's still trying to get me to get out there to buy a special weapon for special needs people. And I might have to make a little flight out there to pick up something special.
Yeah, we'll be out there. I'll be commentating the show in October 9th, the XFN, which is on UFC Fight Pass. I'm the commentator every other month for that one. And so I'll be out there with Ron. If you're interested, maybe we can make it go out for a day of shooting.
Oh, that'd be fun. You might teach me a thing or two. All I have is my Glock 40. I haven't had an AR or M16 since the Marine Corps. And you can't touch those in California because of felony if you're just a citizen. You know how those rules are in California. They're kind of screwed up.
Yeah, that's why I don't think I'll ever move there.
Yeah. Another question is, any ideas? I know you're a free agent right now. Any word on any potential fight coming up, or is it still up in the air right now?
Well, right now I'm actually talking to the guys from the Bare Knuckle Boxing League, the ones that put on there's a couple out there, but the Bare Knuckle, pretty much the premier one that put on the fight with Artem Lobov, and then the boxer, the world champ. I'm bad with names.
Okay.
And so anyways, that league. But it's not 100% official yet, but it's looking like it will be. So as soon as it does, I'll let you know. I'll post it on my social media.
Nice. If the money's right, you'll be in there.
You know what? I just need to get paid enough to make sure my wife's happy so that I can do what I love to do.
There you go. Happy wife, happy life, right?
100%. If I was a single guy, I'd fight for free.
Crazy. Now, all your kids are fighters too, right? Your son's fighting, your daughter's going.
They all have to train it, and that's my thought process because of all the skills being a martial artist. Life skills it brings you, but my boys are much more interested in football, and they want to go that route for right now. So now, football is more of a young man's sport. So it's not like they're going to play it till they're 40. I mean, there's only so many Tom Brady's in the world. So eventually they'll come back to me, and I can teach them martial arts, so we can train that. But at least it keeps us in the gym together. We all live together. It's funny. My wife makes fun of me because over the summer, I'm walking and then my 3 kids are behind me. She's like, it's like a bear and his 3 cubs, you know what I mean? And we're just walking around the gym working out, so it's great.
Nice. So you're in the gym, 5 days a week still doing your thing, doing workouts?
5 and 6 days, yeah. Yeah, 11:30 I do MMA training with all the pros, and then those are probably my hardest workouts. Immediately afterwards, I go and I train weights, and then in the evening I go and do technical training. I don't think you can train twice a day hard, especially not at 41, and I don't think you should even be doing it at 17 at my daughter's age. Wow. It's going to catch up to you. I think the body can, if you push it hard once, I think you're done for the day as far as that energy system is requirements to maintain and increase. But I think you can go back to the gym 6 hours later with some rest and proper nutrition and work technique. Because a lot of guys, they only train hard. And that's great, and that's an aspect of it. But the only part is you don't really learn or get better just training hard. It gets you in shape and it tests what you know. But if you want to really break down and learn, you have to have days where you walk into and practices where you're in the gym and you're walking through things. We hit pads for 15 seconds at a time, work a technique, maybe rep out a maneuver, and then we stop, we break it down, we talk, and then we keep doing it over and over again.
Wow, that's insane. But that's training. And
it's a lifestyle I really enjoy, so I'm happy about it. I don't know what I'm going to do when I retire all the way, because then my wife will be like, you don't need to be at the gym anymore. So that's one thing that kind of brought me into the EP thing, is I'm like, well, I might still have to keep these skills sharp, that keeps me alive. So,
well, I'd love to work with you, because I'm sure you can teach me a lot about studying bilanguage behavior and all that. And that
absolutely, I love sharing knowledge with guys. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think Ron mentioned something about we're going to put probably a training school together or something here down the road. So we're working on that project behind the scenes, and so I think something's going to come in fruition here soon. Well, I don't want to keep you all night, because I know you got dinner coming around the corner there. Your wife's probably yelling at you. So
not yelling, but I did get the look.
I saw that look. I'm like, dinner time, baby. Get in here and eat. But thanks for your time, Frank, and we'll be looking for your social media for that announcement.